are here today at the scarily fast Castle Combe to ride this, the Ducati Panigale Final Edition, which I've very much been looking forward to because I do love Panigales. And this is going to be what it seems is the last large CC V-twin sports bike from Ducati, as obviously we know very soon the V4 is going to come in. The beauty about this bike is it is apparently 2/3 of a Superleggera for about half the price. So we're going to go and try and find out if it really is 2/3 or if it is just a very flashy S with some lovely bodywork and new exhausts. But yeah, we need to get out there first and see what she's like and check in a bit. Well, that was interesting. Let's just say that Castle Combe and this particular Panigale are a little bit like chalk and cheese, just because Combe is so bumpy and the suspension setup that came with the Panigale FE is so stiff. It was just jumping around all over the place. I had a bunch of guys say, "Oh my God, that thing was bouncing everywhere," and it was. However, it was still so much fun. It was wheeling everywhere off any little bump. It was popping up the third, fourth gear. It's very windy as well, so some of the parts of the track were quite hard, but I must admit, just starting to get used to it when I thought, right, it's time to play about the suspension a bit. And then, sadly, it rained, which was an absolute shame because a couple more sessions with the suspension softened off a bit and this would have been as epic as all the other Panigales. Now, the thing about Panigales is, you know, they are not the easiest thing to ride super fast. They really aren't. They butt, they weave, they slide, but this thing was like the Panigale butt weave slide experience times 10 on acid. It was just crazy. Where someone like Silverstone would have been a different story. The super stiff suspension would have been fine because it's quite a smooth place. But hey, at least it was lively, and I tell you what, it entertained not just me, but a whole load of other people there as well. With the track done, the next thing on the list was to do 2 or 3 days on the road, including some commuting, some general kind of riding about, seeing what it's like, and also getting her on the dyno to see where the FE stacks up against the rest of the competition. As you can see, we're here at JHS Racing with William, because we're going to put this little sausage through its paces. Now, when I say competition, I mean against the other Panigales. The reason being is because the FE is Euro 4. Now, the other Panigales currently on sale, the 1299, is Euro 3, which means that this year it's been sold under derogation, which means you won't see that many of them about. However, Euro 4 we know is a lot more strangling, so we got it on the dyno, and I mean, I'm quite pleased to report that the overall figure was 185 horsepower, which matches the Panigale R.
125 newton meters of torque.
That's a lot of torque.
And it's smooth as well.
It is, isn't it? The only slight problem, if you could call it a problem, is that when you matched it up against the 1299S, through the mid-range, this bike, the FE, was lacking. It was lacking between 4 to 6 to 7 to 8 horsepower, depending on what part of the curve, and the same goes in torque as well. That is Euro 4. However, it smashed it in the top end figure by a good 4 or 5 horsepower, which leads me to believe that once you get this huge big collector can off here and put a decent system on this, on the JHS dyno, this bike will easily smash 190 horsepower with an exhaust on, because the engine is basically a Superleggera engine. It's about 600 grams heavier, but that's because of normal bolts rather than titanium. So it's kind of pretty much a Superleggera engine. And you can, you know, it's crazy already. It really is insane already, but you could just imagine when you get a full system on how absolutely, it'll be a lunatic. We've been on track and we know how crazy it was there. Let's go see how this translates to the road. It's cool riding a Panigale. I've been in quite a few places on this the last 2 or 3 days. I've ridden about and everyone looks at this bike. But then again, no matter what Panigale I've ever ridden, everyone always looks at them as well. As cool as the Chaz Davies-alike cans look, they're actually very restrictive, and the bike is really quiet. When you're riding it, what you can mostly hear is the pop, 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 pop of the airbox, and that's really cool. Most people that buy Ducatis or are used to seeing Ducatis will be used to hearing the soundtrack, which is a big part of it. Again, stick a system on, no problem at all. What I did before going out was, William at JHS Racing, we softened the suspension off a bit, because this is the hardest I've ever experienced when it comes to a Ducati. Even the Panigale R has a slightly more pliant suspension setup out of the box than this bike had. William backed it off for me, and the change was remarkable. And I've been literally tearing up all of Wiltshire and Somerset and Devon's Road the past 3 days and having a whale of a time. When you're kind of in town at 20, 30 miles an hour, or say you're trying to cruise in top gear at roughly 50 miles an hour, and I do wonder if that's something to do with the Euro 4 thing, but it's not as usable at very, very slow speeds as, say, the 1299, which you can dribble along in top gear at 50 miles an hour, no problem, whereas this was chugging a little bit. Get above 3,000 or 4,000 RPM and the power is delicious. It's smooth, it's creamy. When you think you've hit full throttle, you then realise you haven't, you twist it again, it'll probably wheelie. Earlier on, you might remember me saying this FE is 2/3 of a Superleggera for about half the price. And that's kind of right. We have the Panigale R suspension, basically. So that's non-electronic, Olin shock, GTX 36 shock. We also have the Brembo M50 brakes, and they are just delightful. They have that lovely, wonderful, soft initial touch, and then as much power as you want. It's so intuitive, because if you pull it a little bit harder, it will give you that little bit harder power, and they are just the best brakes on the planet. It's as simple as that. And the best thing about them is if you have to grab a quick handful, you don't end up endoing and stopping yourself over the bars, even though, to be honest with you, the ABS system on this bike is also very, very good. It's one of the best ones out there. The engine is essentially a Superleggera engine minus a few bits and pieces, but it is pretty much that. Then we have other bits and pieces dotted around, like the carbon mudguard. Okay, there's carbon shrouds all in here as well. Obviously, it's a limited edition as well, so you'll have a number stamp. This one I think is number 90. Yep, this one's number 90. And obviously we've got the Marchesini wheels, which are light. Now this bike is super light at 190 kilograms, and that's fully loaded. And then there's the electronic suite, this is the new one. This is the Evo version of the DTC traction control. The anti-wheelie is epic. It's one of the best ones. The traction control is slightly different in that now if you have traction control on 3, it's what it used to be like on 1 and 2 on the previous 1299S, and 1 and 2 is the slide control one. You know, many other bikes have this, so you can actually try and slide out if you're brave enough, which I'm not always. Before anyone starts going, computers, I don't want my bike be ridden by computers, it does not work like that at all. Okay, you be enough of a tit and you can still spit yourself into orbit. We complain that a Panigale isn't as nice to use as, say, an RSV4 or a Yamaha R1 or a ZX10. I don't want it to be. I've never wanted a Panigale to be like that. I want a Panigale to just punch me in the face and just wake me up. Yes, you have to be a little bit careful when you ride one of these fast on the road, especially with the Olin suspension on, which again isn't as pliant as the electronic Olins that comes on the S, because it will slap a bit, and I'll admit I have turned that steering damper up quite a lot. I guess the big question is this a fitting send-off for the V-twin Panigale? And I would have to say yes. It doesn't feel like a part spin special to me, even though it is essentially one bike made up out of like bits and pieces of 3. People quite often have used the analogy of an Italian girlfriend as living with a Panigale. It's beautiful, it's awesome to look at. Sometimes she's a joy to ride, other times she's an absolute nightmare. I don't think it quite goes far enough, because people never include what these things are like when you're trying to ride them hard. And you go back and watch our Sports Bike of the Year and you listen to everyone about it bucking and weaving and biting and complaining. This isn't just like having an Italian girlfriend. This is like having an Italian girlfriend who is the ride of your life but has a lady garden full of razor sharp teeth. You push it just that teeny tiny bit much, she's going to bite your wang off. No other bike out there wants to punish you the way these things do. And I tell you, when you get it right, those few moments at Castle Combe, for example, when I got a few sections bang on and this thing felt epic, those are the moments that are really special with the Panigale, exactly because it isn't easy to do it on it, even though it is really easy on the eye.